Hey, how's it going, everybody? So today's guest is Chris Mamula. Awesome to have you on the show. Thanks for joining me.
Pleasure to be here. I'm excited to talk to you. Yeah, so I'm from Western Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh. And so grew up very average, lower middle class. And my parents were both just high school graduates, but they were very devoted to my brother and I and giving us a better future. And it was always pounded into us that we were going to go to college and have a better lifestyle and better careers and everything than they had. And I became a physical therapist. And after about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years of working in the US healthcare system, I realized I did not want to do that for the rest of my life. And it took about 10 years, and I stumbled into what's now pretty well known as FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early Community. And I started reading these blogs, and I just saw other people that had similar stories to my own. And I was a natural saver, so I was already saving, but I had no idea what to do with investing or planning or thinking that I could retire early. And once I went down that rabbit hole, I got really serious and started writing my own blog. And I ended up retiring at the age of 41 in 2017.
All right. So I'd like to talk about your actual journey to getting there. What is it that you think that you did differently after you graduated college and started your career than the typical college graduate?
I think a lot of it is honestly just kind of luck. And it was just always pounded into me that just you do not go into debt. And like debt was a 4-letter word in our house. Instead of inflating our spending like most people do, we just kept living off of her salary from day one. And we banked my salary basically from day one. Like at first, after we got out of debt, we just started throwing it into savings for a down payment on a house. And then once we bought our house, we were just basically blindly, we didn't know what we were doing. We were putting one paycheck extra towards our mortgage, and the other we were investing with a financial advisor. So we didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't have a plan. But the whole time, every time I got paid, it was going towards appreciating assets, either towards our house or towards investments. And so even though we certainly were far from optimized, we were making progress. So when I discovered this FIRE movement, we already were close to paying off our house. We had a substantial investment account. And so we had a head start, and we were ready to just really, just for a bad pun, but throw gas on the fire and speed up the process towards hitting financial independence. Basically, what my parents just had a sum of money. They saved as much as they could. And so I was able to get through my undergrad with a little bit of a positive net worth. And then my grad school, I was just searching and hunting, and I ended up getting a scholarship that paid most of my master's degree. And then I was also working through PT school. So again, I graduated. I think like a lot of people, like just debt is so prevalent and it's just everywhere. And so people just accept that. And with my mom and my dad just hammering that into me, like I was always looking for a different way to do things and trying to get through without debt. And I was able to do that.
So you started a blog, right? What made you decide to start a blog?
I started at the time when I started reading, like FIRE blogs were starting to become prevalent. And I'm reading these blogs and they're all using these anonymous synonym names. And I'm skeptical. Like I never even heard of a blog, and I started reading. I somehow stumbled upon. I think my original one I found was called Early Retirement Extreme, and it's this guy named Jacob, and he talked about living in the San Francisco area on $9,000 a year or something ridiculous. And like when I first read it, it almost sounded too good to be true. But there was something in it just resonated with me. So what this whole FIRE community is just taking really simple principles and just basically learning the rules, learning how to minimize your investment fees, learning how to minimize your taxes in totally legal and legitimate ways, and then putting it all together with a high savings rate, and the math works. And so it just changed my life. Like I become one myself and pay it forward to other people and hopefully help them.
How'd you go from starting a blog and writing for a blog to publishing a book, not just any book, but a fantastic book about financial independence?
So my original blog, it was called Eat the Financial Elephant. And I just started, a lot of it was to keep myself accountable. And then, like I said, I just was hoping to build an audience and pay it forward a little bit. I wanted to start interviewing all these people that influenced me and then turn that into a book, like condensing all the principles of financial independence. And Brad and Jonathan started this Choose FI podcast, and I started listening to it. And I was like, they're doing exactly what I wanted to do. I'm looking for how can I add value? And I think that's a principle that other people, if you're looking for how can somebody help me, then you're going to probably get a whole lot of no's, but you might be surprised what yeses you get when you're looking at it and presenting it as how can I help you?
Having that type of attitude of wanting to, I guess, give more than you receive, you'll receive so much more in abundance. What would you say that you enjoy the most or have enjoyed the most on your journey?
I think I've really enjoyed the whole journey. And like I said, so for my wife and I, we had no idea what we were doing early on. And in some ways that was a curse because we talked about like that $20,000 a year mistakes we were making. But on the other hand, I think it was a blessing. And because we got the structural basic things, we were enjoying it the whole time. So yeah, I would say we enjoyed the whole journey.
How can someone with a regular 9 to 5 job build wealth quickly to achieve financial independence?
And I think the first step that I tell everybody to do is you have to know where your money is going. And if you can save a big percentage of your income, you do what we call the simple path, where you're just investing in index funds, and it's really easy. The second path is the active path, meaning basically you're starting your own business, and maybe it's a whole heck of a lot of work to begin with, but then you start, hiring things out and scaling that down, and it lets you have a greater rate of return, and then you're scaling that up that way. And then the third is the hybrid path, which is what I know you like to talk about, is real estate. So it's just matching up your goals, interests with your means and your abilities.
How do you manage risk to know that you're going to have enough money until the end?
I think it's just finding that right balance. And so, like for us, when we had a high savings rate, there really wasn't we could be very aggressive with our investments, because if the investments went down, we were just buying more every month. And because we could be aggressive, most of the time your investments are going to go up. And so that's the approach we took throughout our accumulation phase.
For the people that are listening right now, for somebody that wants to get started, do you have any tips or tricks that you would recommend for somebody that wants to start today?
Yes, I think if you're ready to invest, I don't think that's something that you need to hire a professional. And I also don't think that's something that should take you 2 or 3 years. But I do think it's something that before you start putting your money at risk, that you should sit down and read a couple foundational books. And so I reviewed the couple that really helped me, and I'll list them off. But there's 2 that I think just to get started. One is called The Simple Path to Wealth, and he talks a lot about index investing. And he talked a lot about Vanguard and a guy named John Bogle. And he has a book called The Little Book of Common Sense Investing. And wow, it just hits you hard. Like everything in there is just gold. And so those 2 books I think are just great to start with. And then there's 2 other books that kind of just branch out off of those and teach you about diversification and more risk management. And that's Rick Ferry's All About Asset Allocation, and William Bernstein's The Intelligent Asset Allocator. So those 4 books are really the 4 that I recommend starting with. And there's nothing magical. It's not like there's not other good books, but I would start there before you start putting your money at risk.
So if you could share with us your website or any social media profiles that people can follow and check out to learn more about Chris.
Yeah, so I think I really write to 2 different audiences. So for the people that are listening to this, and it maybe got your interest, but you're just getting started and you're not quite sure where to start, my book is called Choose FI: Your Blueprint to Financial Independence. And again, that's a partnership. There's a podcast called Choose FI. And so what they do is interview a bunch of different people who've taken all kinds of different paths to achieve financial independence quickly. And then my regular home on the internet, it's at Can I Retire Yet? And there it's a lot about my personal journey and where I am now. So those struggles we talked about as we transition from that point of being savers to drawing down our investments, and just determining when do you have enough, and what do you do with this next phase of life when you don't have to work? Where are you going to get purpose and meaning? And we dive into a lot of those topics there. So that's at caniretireyet.com.
That's just phenomenal, outstanding resources. Also, to the books that you mentioned in here as foundational books, it's important to build a foundation, a strong foundation, before you get started in anything like this. Really educate yourself first before you get started is super important, because if you just jump in and you don't know what you're doing, that whole thing that we talked about with risk, well, you're being even more risky at that point. Fantastic advice. Fantastic interview, Chris. This has been an absolute pleasure. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today.
Yeah, it's been fun, and maybe I'll have to come see you in person. That's on my list. I've not been to Hawaii of all the places I've traveled to. So
When you come out here, definitely hit me up. We'll get together.
we'll do that.
All right. Aloha.